Hello and welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. I am excited to talk about the topic we have today, advancing U.S. Africa business partnerships. We have as our guest today Kendra L. Gaither as president of the U.S. Africa Business Center. She joined the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 2015, bringing a wealth of solutions oriented global public policy expertise to the role. In addition to providing policy analysis and advocacy support to the private sector regarding trade policy issues across East and Southern Africa, she serves as the executive director for the U.S. South Africa Business Council. Gaither also directs the Chamber's Coalition for the Rule of Law in Global Markets, which publishes a global business rule of law dashboard to bring more attention to the issue from the private sector perspective. She joined the chamber from Carnegie Mellon University, where she was a global initiatives advisor in the College of Engineering and executive director of the Center for International Policy and Innovation. During her tenure at the university, she supported the establishment of the Carnegie Mellon University graduate campus in Kigali, Rwanda. Kendra, thank you so very much for joining me on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so very much for the invitation.
Absolutely. Kendra, one of the things that I have been wondering about, and I think is going to be of interest to the 360 leadership community, is we know of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and we know of AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce globally. Why did the leadership see the need to create a designated U.S. Africa Business Center within the chamber?
It's a great question. Perhaps I could start by talking a little bit about what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is and use that as a guide to highlight how we came to establish a U.S. Africa Business Center.
Absolutely.
So the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was established in 1912 here in the United States, here in Washington, D.C. And it was really a response to a call to action from the U.S. President at the time, Howard Taft, who felt that there needed to be a national voice of business to help inform the policymaking process with an eye towards what could help the United States grow. Mm-hmm. And so the Chamber at its founding and at its heart has had that mission here in the United States. We have an international division within the Chamber, which is the way that American companies who are looking to engage around the world work with our team of experts to connect with the markets of interest, mm-hmm. to better understand what's happening in those markets, where there are opportunities to partner, to establish operations, or what the regulatory environment might allow. Mm-hmm. And so there's been an Africa program within the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for some time. Mm-hmm. It's been part of a larger, it started as a part of a larger Middle East Africa program that in 2009 gave rise to a standalone Africa program. And really, the fact that we have a U.S. Africa Business Center at the Chamber is a reflection of the increasing focus and interest of the U.S. private sector in engaging with the continent, connecting with partners both within the established private sector, the emerging small and medium enterprise community, with the regional economic communities and the network of African institutions, in addition to the governments, setting the tempo for what business engagement and partnership looks like. And we're very fortunate that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has, as part of its network, an outstanding set of leaders who are really market experts in the field, and those are American Chambers of Commerce. We have 130 AmChams, as we call them, around the world. And those AmChams are accredited in the host countries where they operate. They have independent boards of directors, but in order to be part of our network, they go through an accreditation process that assures that they are also upholding the ideals of free enterprise. They're operating in a sustainable manner that continues to be a way in which companies can engage more directly in markets, where they have interest in operations. So we have the U.S. Chamber of Commerce sits here in Washington, D.C., but we're fortunate to have affiliates around the world and an exceptional network of AmChams across Africa who are helping to advance shared policies and shared vision for partnership. So we have the same vision and we work in tandem, but we're often serving different communities in the same goals.
I see. So, as the president of the U.S. Africa Business Center, what is your mandate specifically?
So my mandate is to support U.S. companies in this unprecedented and growing interest in engaging with the African continent.
Mm.
And we're focused on expanding the trade and investment relationship between the United States and the nations of Africa. My remit covers the entire continent with the exception of Egypt, which has its own standalone program related to its founding that coincided with the Camp David Accord. But in all other countries and island nations, we serve to be at the forefront of helping U.S. companies gather market insights for opportunities that they'd like to pursue in markets, for helping to support a strong enabling environment that would allow for their partnership, and really being at the forefront of building those relationships. We feel very strongly that companies are often the continuity in the economic relationships that governments want to promote, not only in their countries, but in their relations with other nations. And it's those long-term relationships that companies establish, the operations that they set up, the ways in which they partner that allow economic growth to unfold. And so we are fulfilling our mandate by being strong partners and being attuned to what governments and institutions and business leaders on the continent are looking for in terms of partners, and ensuring that the U.S. business community can show up well to be the partners of choice for the leaders across Africa.
Kendra, do you also hold this? I'm hearing the passion and the conviction that this is the time really to lean in on advancing U.S. Africa trade and investment partnerships. Is this also a personal conviction of yours? Why is this important to you, Kendra?
Absolutely. It's a personal conviction of mine. I should note that I started my career as a foreign service officer.
Mm.
I began my career at the State Department focused on economic partnership. And I firmly believe that economic partnerships are the glue that create relationships. And in fact, in all of the positions that I've held at the State Department, at Carnegie Mellon University, and here at the Chamber, it's really about finding common ground and building bridges. And I can think of no greater work than continuing to connect the United States with the nations of Africa. We have a lot of shared priorities and shared goals. And I feel like the relationships that we have don't get enough attention, and the potential to grow them don't get enough attention. So I do consider it quite a personal conviction to make sure that we are meeting the moment that our African partners are asking of us. And increasingly, what we're being asked is to be stronger partners in the economic and commercial space. And the way that we do that is by helping companies to better understand where where their emphasis or their interest or their engagement is sought. And beyond the policy work, I personally believe that if we're talking to governments about that enabling environment, that which is going to help those markets grow, that it's incumbent upon us to also show up in response to when those decisions are taken, and ensure that companies are taking a look at how governments have prioritized that economic and commercial partnership with the United States, and how our companies can best show up for that moment.
Thank you for that, Kendra. That we're in this moment. We're witnessing the efforts, the two-way partnerships between the U.S. and Africa on trade and investment. We're hearing this as a presidential mandate. We're hearing this from business associations. We're seeing private sectors on both sides really gaining momentum and closing significant deals, developmental deals, private sector deals. What does the U.S. Africa Business Center know about the continent of Africa that is working hard to communicate to its members?
That's a wonderful question. I'll give an example from a recent engagement we just had.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce was privileged to host the President of Kenya,
Yeah.
President William Ruto,
Yeah.
here in Washington, D.C. during the historic state visit.
Yeah.
We hosted him here for a U.S.-Kenya business forum.
Mm-hmm.
And we had really three goals around that forum that I think speak to the work that we do writ large in fulfilling our mission as a center. First was to give the president a platform to share information about his vision for Kenya and his vision for how the private sector can play a role in fulfilling that mission. So that companies across the United States, both in the room and watching online, could hear directly from the president what those priorities are and where they have the opportunity to show up to lend their talents, their innovation, their solutions to match where Kenya is seeking to grow. Second, you mentioned this time that we're in right now where there is this increased interest and effort. I would like to say in some small part the work of the Chamber and our U.S. Africa Business Center has played a role in that because we have been advocating before the U.S. government for some time ways in which they can prioritize the relationship with the nations of Africa, including at the start of this administration where we listed a letter with 5 recommendations for how to best ensure that we were meeting the requests that were coming from the continent in terms of how we partner with our African counterparts. And so part of that second thing that we did with the president was to take this enthusiasm of this moment and try to help support going from that enthusiasm, that increased interest, and helping companies find their way to investment. And so providing a space, not just for the big vision, but to have those direct conversation with leaders across the Kenyan government in this instance. But in our work, really creating those opportunities for companies to sit down with counterparts in government to talk about maybe those regulations that are preventing greater scale in their partnership in that market or greater participation in the tenders and other offerings that government and business leaders are offering. And so helping to close the gap between enthusiasm to action on those investment opportunities. And then third, during the U.S. Kenya Business Forum, we celebrated the partnerships that existed and that were being cemented through a deal signing ceremony. And we were fortunate over 2 stages during that U.S. Kenya Business Forum to host 10 signings between businesses in the U.S. and Kenya, between U.S. companies and the Kenyan government, between the U.S. government and Kenyan companies that totaled nearly $2 billion worth of trade and investment and contracts and letters of intent to scale that partnership. So we showcased and celebrated that concrete deals were being made and in turn demonstrated to others who are interested what is possible. And so that's really at the heart of how we engage with all of our counterparts across the continent. We try to make sure that we are creating that space to better understand directly from decision makers what that vision is for the future of the respective nations or regions that we're working with, and to give companies a chance to figure out how they can align with that vision. Have direct conversations where we can help address any sticking points that are preventing that closer collaboration, and then we make sure that others are aware of what's possible. One unique thing that we do here at the Chamber, a few years ago, we started a program called Advance with Africa. And it's part of what we do when we celebrate those deals that are cemented. We're telling other leaders across the United States about the opportunities to engage on the African continent, really breaking down those misperceptions about the opportunity to do business and inviting others in and to be aware of the tools the techniques, the partners that are, and the partnership opportunities that are available. And so it's not just about celebrating the signing ceremonies that you see there. We support companies doing that last mile of negotiations, but we also go around the United States telling other companies who maybe haven't considered how they can be part of this partnership story. We share with them those success stories directly from entrepreneurs who can talk about their experiences and join us on this journey to really show up and meet this moment of enthusiasm with concrete partnership opportunities.
Leader, if you've been applying for next level opportunities without success, it's probably because your CV, bio, and LinkedIn profile don't reflect the real value your knowledge, skills, experience, and expertise brings to the table. So they pass you up and engage more attractive candidates. You can change that. We've helped leaders secure the next level position and a seat on the decision-making table in almost every sector imaginable, and would like to extend the Optimize Your Profile Bundle offer to you too. You will get custom professional CV, bio, and LinkedIn profile expertly done for you and delivered in no time. Click the link in the description to take advantage of this incredible limited time offer today so you never get passed up for opportunities again. This is really great to hear because for a very long time, like as you say, the misperceptions, misinformation has been, oh my goodness, such a large continent and, very much still dark. And is there a place, for trade and investment with the continent? And so I wonder, since the efforts started, whether it's Advance with Africa or other efforts, advocacy efforts, have you seen improvement in perception and the willingness uh, uh, to understand and to partner with the African continent from members?
We have seen that. We've seen that not only are the companies that we work with day to day looking at how they scale and take advantage of opportunities and respond to that call for partnership, but as we've traveled around the country,
Mm-hmm.
Our Chamber of Commerce phone rings, if that's still possible. Our phone rings, our emails are activated, and we hear from companies, maybe companies that we haven't worked with in the past, who are wanting to know more about how they can get involved in doing business with the continent. Or maybe they participated in our Advance with Africa initiative and they want to understand how they take that next step or be connected with partners. And so we've been very fortunate to see that there has been a strong response to what we consider our roadshow across the United States. But there's also the second part to that. And later this year in October, we will be taking a delegation of leaders to Kigali, to Rwanda, for the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AFCFTA Business Forum.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just enough to raise the profile of the opportunities here in the United States, but to take a delegation of business leaders, those who haven't yet been part of the conversation or haven't yet explored partnerships, to take them with us to the continent so they can see for themselves all of the great opportunities that we know that our members who are partnered on the continent have discovered, and bringing more and new market entrants to the table as well.
This is solid. Now, on the African side, Kendra, what roles do African counterparts need to play to strengthen Africa's positioning in advancing U.S. Africa commercial partnerships?
It's a great question. I want to start answering that question by responding to something that you said in the prior question, which is the question around perceptions that Africa is too big. We hear actually two things. One, Africa is too big and it's not clear where to start. But often we hear that African markets are too small, and that for the larger companies that are going to make a long-term investment, choosing a destination or a headquarters or a partnership in a smaller market segment or an economy that has a modest population may not have been compelling for the economy of scale of growth opportunities. And I think that Africa as a continent has done something uniquely African for Africa that also makes the continent attractive right now, which is the really ambitious and innovative development of the AFCFTA.
Yeah.
It is creating a trade bloc that rivals the European Union in size in terms of the number of countries that are coming together to create a common market style approach to trade investment. And so while Africa is focused on increasing intra-African trade, which is important and does for sure need to grow, there's this opportunity also to signal to external partners that borders in some ways are coming down, regulatory barriers are coming down, and that a company in the United States who's considering doing business in Africa right now can locate in Kenya, in South Africa, in Zambia, in Nigeria, in Tanzania, anywhere on the continent, and have access to 1.4 billion people with their innovation and their solution. And so the really difficult work that the African nations are undertaking right now to implement the AFCFTA, to harmonize regulations and standards, is very attractive to companies because it reduces the red tape and the challenge of going from one country to another. The same headaches and challenges that companies in Botswana were experiencing when trying to sell to Cameroon or to Ethiopia or to Morocco. And so those same difficult steps to create an AFCFTA are quite attractive to American companies. And I think that innovative step is one that is attracting new attention to what the continent is doing, and quite frankly, what it's teaching us as the nations come together to introduce a new protocol in digital trade, a new protocol in investment, and a first of its kind protocol encapsulating women and youth and ensuring that trade is inclusive in the design of this new trade area. So I think we're learning as much as we are intrigued and creating opportunities for companies to be part of Africa's growth story.
And this message needs to get out there, right? I love the way you framed it, Kendra. Like the very same effort that's being made to build up AFTA for inter-African trade serves Africa and African partners, because it opens the market. And knowing just how significant Africa is going to continue to be, even when we just think about labor and the workforce, this truly is making Africa more attractive. So if you were to get, like, let's say you're speaking to your members, and they say, all right, what's the bottom line? What are we talking about here? What does the U.S. stand to lose if it doesn't seize the opportunity to become a significant trade investment partner with Africa?
I think companies stand to lose innovation that we are learning from the continent. I think companies are losing the opportunity to provide solutions and partnership to growing communities, growing economies. And I think that companies are not just losing out on today, but if you aren't investing today with an eye towards how you can continue to be partners as Africa continues to grow and scale, in the sophistication of economies and sophistication of the innovation that's coming in technology and the digital economy, in sustainability, in agriculture, in all of these ways, then you also miss out on the future. I often am called to speak about our work, and it often gives me misgivings to quote these statistics that those of us who love and care about Africa and its future talk about. But we have to remember that the things that we know, it's incumbent upon us to always share. And so I do talk to business leaders about how in 2050, not only will 1 in 4 humans on the earth be African, 1 in 3 members of the global workforce. So if we talk about the solutions that come from the continent now in terms of mobile money, in terms of sustainability and green energy. If we talk about the developments that are happening, and the manufacturing and the health resiliency that comes from the continent today, and you think about what is also still lacking in terms of infrastructure, in terms of extending electricity, consistent power resources, and extending the internet. Just think of all of the ways in which Africa already has captivated the world through creative sectors and music and culture and fashion. Imagine how much more we can gain as Africa, as a continent, continues to expand and grow. And so it's incumbent to be part of that moment, to help partner in the ways in which Africa, through the agenda we want, the African Union 2063 agenda, has identified where there are places in which the continent is seeking partners to support Africa's aspirations. If we miss that moment, we also miss out on the moment to grow our own economies through African talent that will shape today and the future.
Kendra, I was going to ask you, so then what would be your call? That was the call.
That's the call.
That's the
That's
call.
the call.
That's the call, both on the U.S. side, but that is also what, on Africa's side, the consciousness that this is what we're preparing for. We are, regardless of what we do now, the continent is going to continue to be a significant determinant of global trade and investment outcomes.
That's absolutely right.
So it makes sense. It is imperative that they be partnerships now, because regardless of the role you play now, this is where Africa is going. And if your nation and your business is going to thrive, and your global interests are going to thrive, this is the time to get into partnerships.
That's exactly right. The call to action is now.
Yeah.
The call to action actually has been, the phone has been ringing, opportunity has been calling for some time.
Yeah.
But it is really incumbent to meet this moment. I think, here in 2024, as we have come out of the pandemic stage of COVID, where many economies around the world were impacted, I think there's a renewed understanding of how interrelated our world is, and the need to really be conscientious about how we connect with one another, because global issues are global issues, be it in health, be it in climate, be it in economic opportunity. All of our futures are truly shared, and this is the moment to act like it, and to respond to the partnership initiatives and the areas of priority that the continent has laid out through the Agenda 2063, if you're serious about being a partner in Africa's growth story.
Kendra, I have goosebumps. Like I didn't think this would be the leadership conversation that produces goosebumps, but yes. Now, a lot of the members of our 360 leadership community are business leaders, and whether it's enterprise or business associations, and I'd like you to please speak to what role they could play. What could be the call to them to support the work of U.S. Africa trade and investment, and of the chamber in particular.
Well, I think first, to the business leaders who are listening, those who are really driven, seized, if you will, by a product they've developed, a solution they've developed, a commitment that they've made to their community through business, I say thank you, because I continue to be inspired. You asked about what motivates me. I'm inspired by the way in which business leaders are really motivated by an idea that they can help change the world.
Yeah.
And they approach it from their expertise and the idea that they have that they think can really make a difference. And that their vehicle for doing that is through business. And so first, thank you. Second, keep doing what you're doing and be unabashed about it. Because I think the truth is we're at this moment where we recognize that for our communities to grow, for our nations to grow, for our regions to grow, for our world to grow, it does involve business working hand in hand in partnership with fellow business leaders, with government leaders, with civil society, really to address today's challenges and the way in which leaders, we have a saying here at the Chamber that business solves. And it really reflects that a business leader sees or has an idea of what can make a product better or fix a problem or help a community. And they are dogged in pursuing and testing and trying and refining that idea, that product, that service. And as they continue to lean into that special talent and that idea that they have, not only does their business grow, but they provide employment for others, and they are creating a community of leaders who are continuing to contribute those solutions to others. And so I think the call to action is to continue to provide those services, provide those businesses, share them with others, because ultimately what you're doing is you're creating a pathway to a greater world. And so in the U.S. Africa business context and the context of expanding commercial partnerships, I think it's looking for ways in which you can partner with others where your solution is needed, where your product can make a difference, can improve lives, quality of lives, health, economic viability, can improve knowledge and knowledge acquisition. I just think there are so many ways in which businesses work with their communities to improve the societies in which they operate. And so I thank them for that inspiration. I urge them to continue to look for ways in which that they can contribute that talent, that gift, that service, that solution to others.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Now, how can we connect with you? And where do we go?
Well, the first place would be the U.S. Chamber of Commerce website. We have a very broad profile of the kind of work that we're doing across the continent and with our U.S. government partners, with the business community leaders in the U.S. and across Africa with our AmCham networks, and that's uschamber.com. And you can see all of the work of the U.S. Africa Business Center there. We also are very active on LinkedIn, so you can find the center there, and on X, if I may say it. Yeah. And then you can find me in all of those places as well. And so I'd be delighted to hear from the Leadership 360 or the 360 leadership community.
Thank you so much for your time, Kendra. This has been an enlightening and an invigorating conversation on the prospects and the promise of advancing U.S. Africa commercial partnerships. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you, Modesta. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you. I think the promise of what's to come is really what inspired me about this conversation. And it inspires me about the work that you do with business leaders to make sure that they can step into their own power through their leadership journey to contribute to this work. So thank you for the honor of speaking to your community.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.